Hello, all my dear cupcakes. Today we are going to read the novel named Cry Even Better If You Beg. Part 2. I think she's grown a bit. Mrs. Mona, the Herhard chef, smiled while looking out the window. Layla was examining the grass and flowers that were beginning to bud behind the forest cabin. She's got a long way to go. She's still smaller than average girls. Look, Bill Remmer. Kids are different than your plants. They can't grow overnight. Mrs. Mona shook her head as she lowered her basket down on the table. What's this? Cookies and cake. There was a tea party yesterday at the mansion. I hate sweets. Really? This is Layla's. Bill Remmer's dark eyebrows wrinkled at Mrs. Mona's nonchalant response. This child was not meant to be here, and yet the Duke's servants began to look after Layla every day. They greeted her, brought her food, and sometimes visited her. It was becoming troublesome for Bill Remmer. You should buy her some clothes. The young lady's skirt seems like it will go up to her knees. Mrs. Mona scared as she stared at Layla running after a bird. Bill failed to refute. Even in his eyes, it seemed obvious that Layla was wearing clothes that didn't fit her. Oh my, look at her. Just when Mrs. Mona was about to leave, she suddenly pointed towards Layla and shouted in dismay. Bill glanced at where Mrs. Mona was looking towards with a queer look. When the bird Layla was chasing after landed on a tree branch, she started to swiftly climb up the tree. Her movements were athletic and light like a squirrel. She sure has a talent for climbing trees. Mrs. Mona scowled at Bill's unconcerned reply. Bill Remmer, you knew about her climbing trees and you let that go? How the hell are you raising your child? She's growing strong and well, as you can see. You're raising that girl like a wild beast. My God. Mrs. Mona raised her voice and made a fuss as Bill snooped around the window deafeningly. Layla perched on the thin branch and watched the many birds playing on the thicket. After watching over the girl for a couple of months, Layla Llewellyn was proven to be a curious child who wanted to know more about the world. Flowers and grass, birds and insects. Anything that caught her eyes amazed and piqued her interest. One day at night, when Layla wasn't returning for dinner, Bill had gone deep into the forest to find Layla sitting by the river looking at a flock of water birds. She was so focused that she couldn't even hear Bill calling her name again and again. After spitting out a couple of more harsh lectures, Mrs. Mona had returned home. Bill had slowly walked out to the back of his cabin. Uncle. Layla delightedly waved towards him. The child, who came down from the tree as quickly as she went up, hurriedly dashed towards Bill. The dull gray one-piece dress Layla was wearing had short sleeves and was ragged. Her hand-me-down-like clothes seemed inappropriate when meeting the Duke, so Bill had made his decision to buy her new clothes. Get ready and come out, Bill said impulsively when the two arrived in front of the back door. Cabin. Uncle, we're going downtown to buy some clothes so you don't have to look so puzzled. Bill awkwardly gave off a dry cough and scratched his back neck. Duke Herhard will be here soon, so it'll be a bit weird to greet him with your state right now. By the Duke, you mean the owner of this land, right? Yes. Since it's break, he'll be back. Break? Does the Duke attend school? Layla frowned as she tilted her head. Bill grinned and stroked the child's disheveled hair. The Duke is only 18 years old, so he has no choice but to attend school. What? 18 years old? The Duke. Bill's laughter grew louder at the child's stunned expression. The child's fluffy hair that Bill had touched with his rough fingertips was as soft as cotton. A train from the capital had entered the platform at the Carlsbad station. The waiting servants approached the private section of the station. By the time they lined up in a straight posture, a tall, slim boy descended onto the platform. Hello, master. Starting with the polite greeting of the butler Hessen, all the other servants soon bowed their heads towards the boy. With a straight and graceful manner, Matthias responded to their greetings with a light but silent salute. His rosy lips were curled up in a smile that was neither excessive nor insufficient. It wasn't until Matthias took a few steps when the Herhard servants began to move. The onlookers quickly backed away and opened the path for the young master to pass. Matthias walked past the platform, without showing any chance of slowing down. A carriage. Matthias smirked as he found a carriage waiting for him in front of the station. Yes, master. Madame Norma doesn't believe cars are trustworthy. I know. For grandmother, cars are simply a lump of iron that is unbearably vulgar and dangerous. My apologies. Next time. No, classic is not bad. Once in a while. Matthias calmly got on the carriage. His long arms and legs gave off. Movements were slow but steady. The carriage gradually picked up speed as it passed through the square and the bustling shopping streets. The separate wagon that was loaded with Matthias's baggage followed the carriage that was engraved with a golden crest off into the distance. Visits by relatives who are planning to spend the summer in Arvis. Social gatherings. Insurance issues for the trade ship to sail next month. Matthias, sitting at the backside of the carriage, stared outside the window as his butler Hessen reported the family's pending issues. Matthias replied to Hessen's words with a brief answer or a nod. The directors were in charge of the company, and Matthias's mother and grandmother were in charge of the family affairs, but the power to make the ultimate decision was up to Duke Herhard. And Matthias has been in that position ever since he was 12 years old. By the time Matthias entered the Platanis road to the Herhard territory, Hessen's report was over. Matthias gazed at the familiar scenery with his head tilted at an angle. The tall trees that lined both sides of the driveway were arched as if they were holding hands. The fragmented sunlight gliding through the swaying leaves embroidered the path like a beautiful pattern. Passing the road and into the territory, a white mansion with a deep blue roof had revealed itself. At the front door, the mother and grandmother were out to greet the family's head. While Matthias was straightening the position of his already linear tie, the door to the wagon opened. Welcome, Matthias. The Dowager Duchess of Arvis, Norma Katerina von Herhard, greeted her grandson with a bright smile. Matthias bowed his head and accepted his grandmother's kiss. Elise von Herhard, who was standing behind them, approached Matthias with a slightly more straightforward attitude. You've grown taller. She gave him a warm hug and smiled. Her dark black hair, just like her son's, shined in the early summer sun. Matthias replied with a corresponding smile. The greetings that were shared with the other servants who were waiting in line were not much different. Matthias's refined manner and proper courtesy were distinctly shown towards the servants. He was the perfect owner of this family. Duke Herhard. Standing between his grandmother and mother, Matthias took the lead and crossed the lobby hall. Before he climbed up the stairs, he suddenly raised his head and looked up the huge chandelier that was lit up in the middle of the day. Beyond the chandelier was the crest of Herhard family imprinted on the ceiling. He was a Herhard. It was another name for intelligence, elegance, and unrelenting character. In his own life, Matthias never had any complaints or doubts. He was well aware of the type of life he had to live in and was willing to accept it. He handled his life as if he were breathing, and it was easy as that. With his gaze focused down, Matthias climbed up the stairs with large strides. When the owner of the household safely entered the mansion, the servants were now able to properly breathe. The people of Arvis prepared for days in advance to thoroughly greet Duke Herhard. Everything and everyone had to be perfect on his arrival, including those who were residing on his land. The servants had to be on their best appearances. The Arvis uninvited guest, Layla Llewellyn, was no exception. Did the Duke go in already? Layla, standing at the edge of the group of servants, whispered in a rather disappointed voice. The ivory dress that Bill had bought fluttered along with the girl's movement. You'll see Duke Herhard in the woods. I'll have to ask for permission. Then, Bill Remmer gave out a blunt answer and started walking towards the woods. Layla ran after him. Does the Duke like the forest as well? Well, yeah, sure. He likes hunting. Hunting? In the woods. Layla's eyes grew wide open. Bill snorted as he glimpsed down the child. Isn't it natural the forest is the hunting ground for this family? Then, does he hunt birds too? The Duke enjoys hunting birds the most. Layla stopped walking in contemplation at Bill's insignificant remark. After realizing what he had said, Bill awkwardly gave out a dry cough. He thought of appeasing her with a proper lie, but Duke Herhard was scheduled to be on the hunting ground in a couple of days. He was worried that he might give the child a greater shock if he tried to relieve her with his white lies. Bye-bye all my dear cupcake. See you in next video.